Seeking the Stones. In 1995, I had an inexplicable urge to stand at the centre of a circle of standing stones. I looked through a book on prehistoric Scotland and found a number of sites of standing stones and cairns in a place called Kilmartin Valley, not too far distant from my home base of Dumbarton. On the morning I was to go to Kilmartin, I ventured to Dumbuie, Yellow Fort, a hill overlooking the River Clyde on which had stood a watchtower, BCE. As I made my way up around 7 a.m, I took a wrong turning and found myself at the gate of a field of sheep. Suddenly, a man drove up in a Land Rover to ascertain if I was lost. My goal was explained, and in the general run of conversation, Kilmartin was mentioned. He then told me I should not miss Danad. This too was in the book, but I had not picked up on it, as I had been seeking the stones, not forts. Considering what was to transpire, this farmer takes on more of a shepherd role. On going to Kilmartin, I found a veritable treasure of standing stones, cairns, circles, as well as the fort. Danad is a hill 176 feet high, standing in the valley of the River Ad. The summit is accessed through a path that snakes its way up past a house through a stone gully. Just short of the summit there is a rock upon which is carved the figure of a wild boar, Ogham, and the shape of a foot. On this rock, it turns out, the kings of Dalriada were crowned in the 6th century. At the top of Danad, I was awed by a singular wind that blew eerily, and the whole experience took on a spiritual hue. As I was leaving, I was taken by the numerous rocks strewn about the hill and the idea of a settlement being built up around them. The rocks imprinted on my mind. In 1999, I returned to Danad with my niece Catherine. While there, I read her a number of poems, including my poem Danad. When we were about to leave, Catherine said she should take a picture of me there because I loved the place so much. I eventually agreed. She took a picture from the level below the peak, shooting up. When the film was developed upon my return to Canada, the picture, taken by a cheap Kodak, had double exposed to create a startling image showing myself horizontal and vertical in the same frame. Considering the earlier feeling of 1995, this image reinforces for me my special affinity with the fort on the Ad. Over the years, I have discussed my experience on Danad with many people in an attempt to tease out its potential meaning. The responses have been diverse and coloured by the varied beliefs of the respondents. On occasion, people would ask me what I thought of the phenomenon. Here is my answer from the first time I saw the double-exposed image. In my imagination, I feel that I was an Irish druid who had converted to Christianity and had come from Ireland with Columba. As Columba would have been the spiritual head of the area and was a cousin of one of the kings of Dalriada, I feel he would have visited Danad and I had come with him. Having adopted the boar as an emblem totem since first seeing the engraving on Danad, 1995, I always note any information I find on the subject. Around Christmas of 2003, I was in a bookstore in Guelph when I came across a bestiary in which was a decent write-up on the boar, and as I stood reading I almost fell over when I found the following. The Druids called themselves boars because they sought the trees for isolation. I later went on the net to search for Druid plus boar. On the 7th site, the Druid Path, I came across a listing of totem animals including the boar. I brought up the information on the boar only to decide I would not have time to read it at that moment, so I printed it. Later I looked over the printout and discovered on the second page the image of the boar's head superimposed on standing stones, a dolmen. The circle had completed. The first impulse in my gut that had brought me to Templewood and Danad was contained in an image with the totemic animal that had been discovered while there. I feel my imagination has been vindicated. Sometime after my first visit to Danad, I learned of another compelling connection with the boar. My mother had told me that her mother, born on the Murrisk overlooking Clew Bay in Mayo, had informed her that we are descended from Grunwale, Grace O'Malley, the Irish pirate queen of the late 16th century. It turns out that prominent on the O'Malley coat of arms is a red boar, where the boar signifies the deportment of a warrior and the red military strength and generosity. In 2008, I was with a group of spiritual seekers on a pilgrimage to Ireland under the banner Rekindling Indigenous Spirituality. Among the group were a number of natives of Turtle Island, as well as OISE faculty members and sundry Irish and Irish diaspora. One participant in the group was an Irish Cherokee woman who told me at one point after I had shared a poem with those in attendance that there was an ancient man dressed in raiment who accompanied me and showed himself to be most pleased with me. I never thought much of this revelation until I was caught up in a very mysterious illness in 2019. It was around May of that year, while visiting in-laws in Ottawa. I was struck with a horrendous pain in both my shoulders. It felt as I lay in bed that night as though I was crucified, so painful was the agony felt. It created a sleepless state as I sought ways to find ease to no avail. Later at home, I related the story of my shoulder pain to a shamanic friend in the States. He indicated that sometimes such an unforeseen pain can occur in certain people of a sensitive nature and is linked with the spiritual realm, namely a spirit seeking assistance from beyond. He informed me that he had a friend who might be able to help me. This friend, Damaris by name, after a brief discussion of my background, went on a shamanic journey to discover what might lie behind my distress. Eventually, she determined that I was linked with a former king and his son from Danad, a finding that seemed in keeping with the ancient scene attending me in Ireland. Damaris was able to share the following from her vision. A young, desolate king weeping over a discarded crown. The king as a skeleton bearing within his frame a smaller skeleton and 2 cups of libation. She felt, as outlined in my poem Danad, that I had made a vow and that the king's visitation was to keep me to my promise. Thus was planted the seed for the Chronicles. In this work I, Seamus, address the spirits of the king, Flaith, his son, Mac, and a representative of the bardic order, Ailleacht. As I worked out in the back patio, typing the final section of the poem on my tablet, a monarch butterfly flew in. He descended to my left, then up behind my head before rising on my right side. He repeated this manoeuvre 3 times in all before flying off. I found this behaviour unusual, and during his swooping the thought of Flaith came to my mind, followed immediately by the phrase, "Free at last." Here is a poem which I wrote 10 or 11 years ago, which seems to hold precognitive elements of the current work. Vision. I hear your voice carried on the wind, reminding me of the gift that is tradition. I'm aware of your light through the sight of my soul. It blesses and warms, enlivens and strengthens, creates a profound and far-reaching vision. Peering into the beauty that is life, awestruck, wandering its depth, the light that enters each heart like lightning, opening the wonders of the world. I see through the forest in the dying light, happy in the midst of my silent and still soul. I stand in thought in the deepest part of the Nemeton, The grove, where rests the peace long sought after, now spreading its light to confront the inner dark. From the soul's heart we work the light to make the darkness clear. It is time to seek vision before it melts in the rhyme-filled air, seeking in words to recapture what was hidden in the maw of ignorance. Beat on the heart's anvil with the hammer of the soul, the words that will spell out remembrance. It is seeing through feeling that brings vision, rather than a flash bright and immediate. Vision simmers in the distillation of the soul. It broods in the crannies of the heart, awaiting fermentation and freeing. It ascends from the depths, forcefully fashioning in words as it surfaces. People speak of visions as though something outside coming in, but it may well be that visions are born in the dark of our souls, projected and read as from the outside. Visions are the sparks of the divine within, the essence in all that lies buried in the penumbra of our being. Let us turn there to free the light, to grace the star-blessed planet, and promote the healing of the whole.